Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Home in Progress, brought to you by RepcoLite Paints and Benjamin Moore. And how are you all doing? I want to know how everybody did with this first snowfall of the season. I didn't handle it that badly. I did okay, but man, what it did really make me realize is how many leaves I've still got in my trees. My goodness. I've got 2 huge maple trees in the backyard that I think have to be, I can't do the math on this, but they seem to be almost 90% full, right? The leaves still seem green up there for the most part. I think they're going to be falling well into December. And I'm hearing coworkers saying that I think they were saying that November 15th, so today, is the cutoff day for putting leaves on the road for them for city pickup. I don't know what the rules are like where you're at, but I'm pretty sure that's what a number of my coworkers are dealing with. Fortunately, I mulch mine, so I'll get through them eventually, but I do like them to be dry when I do that. It's a lot easier, and it's really nice when there's no snow on the ground when you do it. All right, let's get to the show. Now, this week, I'm going to be stepping way outside of my comfort zone. I'm going to be talking about fashion. And not just fashion. It's almost embarrassing to say this out loud. I'm going to be dishing out fashion advice to men. I'm going to help you guys be better dressed people. It is literally an insane concept. You should see what I'm wearing right now. Jeans with holes, an old sweatshirt. I think there's salsa stains on it. Or it's blood. I don't know, probably a combination. But I really do have some good stuff that I'm going to convey. And of course, I got it all from doing a lot of research. Don't worry, this is not coming from me alone. It's not that I know any of this stuff. I researched it, and it's good stuff. And if you've ever wished that you could dress with just a little more style, a little more panache, or whatever that word is, I can help. And of course, as we do all of that, I'm going to make each point. I'll talk about clothing styles and fashion, but of course, I'll be making a complimenting point about home improvement stuff. Now, it sounds weird maybe, but it's going to work. Trust me, it's going to be good, so hang out for that. But right now, before we get to all of that brilliance, I want to talk about one of the most underrated tools in any homeowner's arsenal, or what should be in any homeowner's arsenal, the circular saw. And I'm going to be straight up honest. For years, I was freaked out by these things. They're loud, they're aggressive, they look dangerous, crazy dangerous. So I avoided them like the plague. Instead, I'd use my little benchtop table saw or my little miter saw for everything, even when it made 0 sense. But here's what I've learned through all of my many years. My many years of accumulating wisdom. I've learned that if you spend time around professional carpenters or even really well-established DIYers, people who know what they're doing, you're going to notice that a circular saw is a tool that they're reaching for all the time. And there's a reason they're doing that, and that's what I want to talk about today. All right. Before I jump into all of that, I want to get this out of the way right away because I don't want the emails. I know that a good table saw is going to give you the most precise cuts. Especially for repeat work. And yes, a track saw, another option, a track saw system, like something from Festool or Makita, it's going to deliver laser straight accuracy for breaking down sheet goods. I get all of that. But those aren't the tools that most DIYers own or can afford to buy. Now, lots of us have small benchtop or contractor saws squeezed into the corner of a garage. And if that's what you've got and you've ever tried to push like a 4x8 sheet of plywood through one of those things, you know how awkward and death-defying that can be. I've had sheets bind and kick back on me. It's terrifying. All right, that's where the circular saw changes things. It's portable, it's versatile, and with the right accessories, guide rails, straight edges, things like that, it can be ridiculously accurate. Maybe not furniture grade accuracy, but you're still going to get more than enough accuracy for pretty much everything you do around your house. Now, let's talk about types before we get into some of the things that you can do with a circular saw. There's 2 main types out there. There's a Sidewinder and a worm drive. Now, the Sidewinder, it's lighter, maybe 7 to 9 pounds, and the motor sits beside the blade. It spins fast, usually maybe 5,000 to 6,000 RPMs, and it's the most common homeowner saw. It's what you think of most likely when you think of a circular saw. The worm drive circular saw has the motor in line with the blade, so it's in the back a little bit. It's a heavier saw, maybe 10 to 13 pounds. It runs slower, not as many RPMs, but it's got a lot more torque. The inline design also gives you a much clearer view of your cut if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, it's a little harder to see, but if you're right-handed, you've got a really nice straight-on look at the cut that you're making. Now, both of these different types have their place. For most homeowners, a Sidewinder is going to be perfect, lighter, less fatiguing, but if you're ripping through heavy lumber or engineered beams or things like that, that worm drive's torque is a real advantage. Now, either way, getting a saw, look for a 7 1/4 inch blade. That's the standard size. You can get littler ones that are for more intricate work, but if you're looking for a good all-around circular saw, make sure it's that 7 1/4 inch blade size. It's going to cut clean through a 2x4 at any angle. It's just going to be the most convenient to work with. All right, so those are circular saws. Those are the main options out there. Let's talk about some of the specific things that they can do. First off, they're great with crosscuts. Grab a speed square as a guide, and you can make perfectly square crosscuts faster than you can walk a board over to a miter saw. Now let's talk about rip cuts. Running the length of a piece of wood. This is where the circular saw really, really shines. And I think for ripping big sheets of plywood, this potentially could be even safer than a big table saw. It's for sure safer than a little bench saw, especially if you're working alone or in a tight space. I've fought full sheets through a benchtop saw. I've even done full sheets through a table saw, and I've had them bind. And then they can kick back, and they can kick back hard. I mean, it's terrifying when this happens if you don't have all the safety mechanisms in place, which of course we do. With a circular saw, you just lay the plywood on a few sacrificial 2x4s, clamp your guide down, and then make the cut right where it sits. Again, you're not wrestling with it. You're not worried about kickback. You're just making clean, controlled cuts. Every circular saw, they're going to let you tilt the base for bevels. You can usually get up to like 45 degrees. You can even make shallow dados or notches by making a few careful passes, if you had to. It's not a substitute for a table saw dado stack or anything like that, but for quick, rough carpentry, it does work. You can make it work. Now, finally, because the saw goes to the material, you're bringing the saw to the project, you can cut boards or siding right in place. You're not walking back and forth to your chop saw. So this is perfect for deck projects, siding projects, building a shed or anything like that. Now, all right, as we get to the end of this, something that really is going to help you elevate your experience of using a circular saw are going to be some add-ons. I've talked about some of these all segment long. I just kind of dropped names, but I want to point them out specifically just for a minute because they're really, really valuable. First off, a speed square. A good 7-inch rafter square is your best friend for, quick, accurate cuts. You hook it up, you line it up, and you've got a perfect 90 or 45 degree cut every time. So a speed square, get one of those. Second, a straight edge or a track guide. This is how you get pro-level accuracy. You could buy commercial tracks, Makita, DeWalt, and others. They make them. They start around, 150 to 200, something like that. Kreg, Kreg, has a number of offerings, and I've seen those starting as low as $50, somewhere in that range. You can buy tracks that will help you, make sure you're getting straight, consistent cuts. Or if you don't want to make that purchase, you can always make your own if you've got some scrap plywood lying around. There's a lot of plans online that will walk you through the process, what you need to do. I'll link to one of them, one particular one in the show notes if you want to check it out. And that one talks about how to make your circular saw into a DIY track saw. It's definitely worth checking out. So I'll put that link or that video in the show notes. Dig into that afterwards a little bit. Another add-on that you'll want or need are quality blades. The blade that your saw came with, it's really going to be for rough framing lumber, period. If you want cleaner cuts, you're going to want to step up to a 40-tooth carbide blade for general work or even a 60 to 80-tooth for plywood and finish cuts. And remember, a dull blade is dangerous. It binds, it burns, it kicks. So keep it sharp or replace it when needed. And if you aren't aware, there are places all around that will offer blade sharpening services. I didn't realize that and did a quick Google. I just ran it through the Goog and I found a number of places near me that will sharpen blades. I had no idea. So keep that in mind. Fourth thing you're going to want to make sure you've got are clamps. Don't try to hold a guide with one hand and cut with the other. Do not do that. Just don't even picture it because it's going to give you the willies. Just picturing that process. Use clamps, bar clamps, seat clamps, whatever you've got, but use clamps. All right, last thing I want to talk about, of course, is safety. Got to be safe. Eye protection, ear protection. Watch out for the cord as you're cutting. I've seen people cut right through their extension cords. Don't be one of those people. It's avoidable. It's dramatic, and it's avoidable. You don't want that. So watch out for that cord if you're using a corded device. Another thing, let the blade stop completely before you set the saw down. And here's where some newer saws really shine. Many of them have electric brakes that stop the blade in about a second or two after you release the trigger. Now, they cost a little bit more, but they can be worth it, especially if that blade guard, every saw has a blade guard that will swing back. It's spring-driven, and it will pop back into place once you're done with your cut. Every now and then, that guard can stick, and it doesn't cover the blade again. So you've got to be mindful to let that blade stop completely before you set it down, or invest in a circular saw that has one of these electric brakes, but still make sure that the blade stopped before you set it down. Keep both hands on the saw. That front handle on it is there for a reason. And if the saw starts bogging or binding, just stop. You got to figure out why it's doing that before you force it through the cut. That's how you keep things safe. Basically, treat it with respect, stay alert, and you'll be fine. I know they're intimidating a little bit, but if you treat it with respect, stay alert, you'll be fine. All right, circular saws. If you don't have one, look into it. You'll use it for so many projects throughout the years around your house. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, I am going to be dishing all kinds of brilliant information for the better-dressed man out there. If you want to be one of the better-dressed men on your block, I've got the scoop. And that's all coming up next. Stick around. Home in Progress is brought to you by RepcoLite Paints and Benjamin Moore. Top-tier paint, expert advice. Your next project is way easier than you think it's going to be. All right, it's time for me, Dan Hansen, to dish out fashion advice to the well-dressed men out there, the people who want to be well-dressed men. Hopefully you're scooting your chair just a little closer to the radio box and you're listening with rapt attention to all the gold that is going to be dripping from my mouth, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, let's get on with it. A few weeks ago, I talked about how my daughter got married. Recently she got married. And, of course, for the wedding, everybody got dressed up. Right? And for the first time in probably 20 years, I found myself wearing a suit. I felt like a very short and a little portly version of James Bond. But still, I did have that James Bond feel. It was kind of fun. But on top of that, I also got to see my sons dressed in suits or tuxes or whatever they were for the first time. Really for the first time. My daughters looked great and all of that. I'm not dissing on them. It's just that we're talking men's fashion here. So I'm focusing on the dudes. Anyway, my kids looked great. My sons looked great. My girls look great too, just in case they listen. They never listen to the show. But just on the off chance, they were amazing. They were beautiful. But my sons, they looked great too. And they looked a lot better than I did. In fact, at the reception, as we're all hanging out, kicking back, having a big time, somebody walks up to my middle son and compliments him on his clothes. And in fact, this person said something that really stuck with me. He said, lots of people can put a suit on, but not as many people can really wear a suit, or something like that. It was really smart. And then he told my kid that he was one of those people who were really able to wear a suit. That was a great compliment, and it got me thinking. I just wish I knew what it took to dress well. Because honestly, and I'm sure this will come as a profound surprise to pretty much everybody listening, but I don't dress well. At all. I've got some decent things, a couple of nice sweaters. I've got some khaki pants and all, but I don't dress well. I just don't know what to do. That's the idea anyway. And most of the time that's okay, right? It's not like I've got loads of reasons to dress impeccably. For starters, I work in a warehouse largely by myself. There are mice, 2 less mice than there were earlier in the week, thanks to some well-placed mouse traps. But really, I work with mice, machinery, And that's pretty much it. Not many people. And when I go home to the kids who really don't care if I'm wearing sweatpants or jeans with holes in them as long as I'm not just sitting around in my underpants, right? So I don't have a huge pile of reasons for wanting or needing to dress impeccably. But there is something inside that says, wouldn't it be nice if you didn't look like your clothes were all hand-me-downs? And yes, it would, internal monologue voice. It would be nice if I didn't always look like a hobo. So I'm thinking about all of that. That's on my mind. And then right on the cusp of having those thoughts, Benjamin Moore comes out with their color of the year for 2026, Silhouette. And all of the literature that they release about it, or most of the literature that they release about it, talks about how silhouette and their choice is tied to the fashion world. They talk about how color and fashion go hand in hand. And then in one of the release videos, I can't remember, it might be on most of them, but one particular one for sure that I saw, they talked about dressing a room in the same way that we dress ourselves. And I really, really, really like that connection. I thought that was great. But since I have no idea how to dress myself, to look good, I know you put your legs through the leg holes of the pants and stuff like that. You put your underwear on first, then your pants. I know that much about dressing myself, but I don't know great huge things about dressing myself well. Apparently, I don't even know great huge things about talking well. But anyway, since I don't know all of those things, and I'm not fluent in them, how can I talk about dressing a room? Well, that finally brings me to the bigger point that I want to make in the next few segments. I've taken a deep dive into the world of fashion and the art of dressing well, and I've uncovered many, many things, many profound things that could help me if I implement them. They can help you dress better, men out there, and women too, maybe. You're going to have to do the groundwork on that to fill in the gaps. I'm talking to the dudes at this point. But not only have I uncovered all of these hidden truths, these secret wonders about dressing well, I've also cataloged a number of home improvement points and lessons that we can learn from these same fashion points. So with all that said, let's get started. The first lesson that I've got is this, and I should highlight right off the bat that this is coming from this brilliant article that I found online. It's an article in or on theessentialman.com. It's written by Peter Guyen, Nguyen, and I'll link to this article in the show notes. All right, the first lesson that the article has is this. You've got to realize that dressing is a skill. It's a skill. Nobody's born with it. Knowing how to dress. Nobody's born with it. We don't spring from the womb with some perfectly tuned intuition regarding how to dress well. It's a skill. You get better with practice. And that's so important for me. It's such a real life, down and dirty place to start. Because as smart as I tell myself that I am, and make no mistake about it, I tell myself I'm pretty smart. As smart as I tell myself I am, there are a large number of things, skills that I convince myself are somehow innate. Dressing well is one of them. I feel like I'm utterly clueless when it comes to this. It's an innate skill. It's something that you just have or you don't have. And because I don't have it, I pretty much write it off as something I'll never be able to do. I don't have what it takes. Now, some people do. They just know what kind of clothes to put with this or that. They've got a superpower, this inherent ability. That's what I tell myself, but it's not the truth. Nobody's born with it. We all start in diapers. It's a developed skill. Learning to, wearing diapers is not a developed skill. You can just fall right into that. Dressing well is a developed skill. You learn it with practice. And that's really good news, because if you'd like to dress better, to know what to put with what, if you want to look intentional in what you choose to wear, it's something you can learn. It's going to take time. It's going to take practice and all of that. But you can get there. I can get there. That ship hasn't sailed. That's the bottom line in all of this, in this first lesson. That ship hasn't sailed. It doesn't matter how old you are. That ship is still in port, honking its horn or blowing its whistle. Whatever ships do, it's doing it, and you can still get on. And I'm sure that you can see the paint and the design and the home improvement connection in all of that, right? It's a connection to almost everything related to life in general, but let's just keep it to home improvement. Painting well, let's get specific. Painting well is a skill that you can learn. Using saws and tools and constructing cabinets and installing trim, all of those things are skills you can learn. Putting together color combinations that look great, that capture the mood and the atmosphere that you're trying to create in a space, all of that is a skill. I couldn't tell you percentages, but so many people, way too many people write themselves off on way too many things. I hear it all the time. I do it all the time. I've done it in the open part of this show. Everything preceding this, I've talked about how I'm not good at dressing well, right? We write ourselves off all the time. And I really hear it in regards to home stuff. That's one of the most common areas that I hear this happening. People say they're not skilled with painting. They're not skilled with home repairs in general. They're not mechanical. They're not good with their hands. All of that. You've heard it too, hundreds of times. Everybody out there listening knows exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe you've said it. For sure, you've heard it. But here's the thing to take out of this first lesson. All of those things that people are talking about, well, most of them. I can't say all of them, but most of those things that people are talking about that they're not good at are skills. And all skills, I think I can say all there, all skills are learned. They're developed. They're fine-tuned. And everybody who's good at those things, whatever they are, everybody who's good at those things right now, every master craftsman, every master painter, whatever you want to imagine, every master of their craft was new at it and stunk at it at one point. We don't spring from the womb with fashion sense, and we don't spring from the womb with this inborn knowledge of how to paint ceilings, cut in around trim, or to install tile on our backsplashes. Yes, some of us maybe have certain characteristics that we're born with that make us a little more inclined to be able to learn certain things quicker, pick things up faster than other people. But everything is within your reach. So if you find yourself sitting around like I was after that wedding, my daughter's wedding, and if you find yourself thinking, man, I wish I knew how to dress better. If you ever do that with anything, with design and decorating, with painting, with woodworking, plumbing, automotive repair, anything, if you have a desire and a wish to be better at something like that, remember, almost all of those things that you're thinking about are skills. They can be learned. So don't waste your time wishing when you can actually start. That's the first point. You can learn this stuff. All right, second point. After saying all of that stuff about dressing well being a skill and interior design being a skill, I can already hear some of the objections out there. I've already hinted at some of them, but let's sum up some of these objections with a simple phrase. I'm sure you've heard it, and it's possible you've used it. I can learn certain hands-on skills, but personally, I just don't have the eye for choosing colors and putting things together in that regard, right? I don't have the eye for it. Let's go back to clothes for a minute, fashion for a minute, because I've said the same thing many times in regards to fashion. I don't have the eye for putting together clothing articles that just look good together. Well, if you're in that boat, again, let's just keep it at clothes, at fashion for this moment. If you're in that boat and you're thinking those thoughts, the author of our Essential Man article says there's something to try. He explains that he gets these objections all the time when he's trying to help guys get better at dressing. To dress better. Like I said earlier, we all know how to dress ourselves. Most of us do. We just don't know how to dress ourselves well. Not all of us do. So when he's got people that he's trying to help and they say things like that, he says he gets that objection all the time. I just don't have the eye for it. He tells them, take 5 minutes and list off a few people that you think look good. Other guys who dress well. Who maybe have looks that you'd like to emulate to some extent. Actors, musicians, you name it. Now, he tells his clients that when he's working with them, but I'm telling you to try it right now. If you don't think you've got an eye for fashion, just mentally list off some people that you think do have a good eye for fashion, people that you've seen who you think really look good in their clothes. Even if you don't think you could pull off the look, just create a list very quickly of a few people that you think look great. Well, here's the thing, and this is really kind of fun. It's like a little parlor trick. If you created a list of people in your mind and in your head that you think look good in their style choices, you've just completely debunked the entire assumption that you don't have an eye for fashion. You do have an eye for fashion. You know what looks good. You may not know why it works or how to do that yourself, but you do know what looks good to you. You do have an eye for fashion. So the second lesson, or whatever you want to call it, is to challenge your assumptions. the stories that you tell yourself. The article points out that the stories we tell ourselves are often invisible barriers that we put up to keep us in our comfort zone. So challenge those things. You think you don't have a good eye for fashion? Chances are you do have a better eye for fashion than you think. Don't let an excuse stop you from moving ahead. Now, let's translate that into the world of design and color choices. And I'm sure you can already connect the dots here. You can see where I'm going. People all the time fall back on the story, because we're challenging our assumptions. We're challenging the stories that we tell ourselves. People often fall back on the story that they don't have an eye for choosing colors. I have been in so many conversations about this. It's impossible to count them all. And I'm sure you've been in conversations like this too. People say, or you say, or I say, I don't have the eye for putting colors together. Not like my sister, not like my friend, not like this or that person on Instagram. Their rooms are amazing. Their spaces and their color choices are mind-blowing, right? They're perfect. Everything they put together is like magical, and I don't know how they do it. I don't have an eye for doing that. We've all heard those things said. And of course, that's where you're wrong. The fact that this or that room or this or that color palette looks great means you've got an eye for it. You get it. You know what looks good. You know what you like. You may not know how to do it yet. You may not know all the formulas for finding the right proportions of colors and textures and patterns in a space, but you do have an eye for it. So just like with clothing and style, challenge your assumptions. Don't let a false conclusion keep you from accomplishing things that are easily within your reach. All right, another clothing lesson in our Essential Man article that we're referencing here. Another lesson is that fit matters more than everything else. Getting the right fit solves almost all of your wardrobe problems. You don't need designer labels. You don't need fancy fabrics, whatever. When clothes fit, even something simple looks good. Remember my example from the wedding. I talked about it at the beginning. I was in a suit. My son was in a suit or a tux or whatever it was, and he got the compliment. He was told that he was truly wearing that suit. Now, what about me? I looked at myself and him a little more closely after that comment, and here's what I found. My suit coat was longer than it should have been, and the shoulders, in the sleeves, and the shoulders didn't sit exactly right. And it's because it came from the thrift store, right? It was $5. I was thrilled to have found this thing. But it wasn't made for me. I fit into it, kind of, but it wasn't, truly fitted to me. It didn't sit exactly right. The pants that I wore, they were just cheapos that I snagged on Amazon. The pants were a touch shorter than they should have been. And my shirt, it was just one that I had at home. So I looked fine. For the most part, I looked okay. I looked decent. My kid, on the other hand, had to go, right? Because he was standing up in the wedding. So he had to go and get fitted for his suit. And it was adjusted so that everything was designed for him. And that made a huge difference in how we carried off the look. All right. Now, I'm not saying that everything has to be professionally fitted. But when I think about my wardrobe, most of the stuff that I've got, it's too big, and lots of guys have the same issue. The baggier clothes, yeah, they just feel more comfortable, right? We're not stretching the seams or stretching against or fighting against the constraints of the clothing. They're big, they're baggy, they're comfortable, but they throw off our proportions, right? They can make you look shorter. They can make you look heavier. These are all absolute deal breakers for me. I should not be made to look shorter and heavier. I am really working against things when I allow my clothing to do that. I mean, I'm already behind the 8 ball on some of these things. I don't need help. So fit is important with clothing, but it's also hugely important for interior design. Now, in design, the fit, and I love this point. This is one of those aha moments that was really fun for me to think about. In design, the fit that we're talking about is how color, furniture, and balance, all work together. So take the 60-30-10 rule, for example. It's a basic color guideline that designers use all the time. 60% of your space should be your main color. The walls are biggest pieces. 30% should be a secondary color, maybe the drapes, a rug, furniture, things like that. 10% is your accent color. So the pillows, the artwork, other little touches. Now, when you keep those proportions largely in check, your space feels calm and it feels polished and it feels well put together. When you don't, when every color's fighting for equal attention, it feels busy and it feels off balance, no matter how nice the paint or the furniture is. So keep that 60-30-10 rule in mind when you're putting your color schemes together. And just like clothes, furniture has to also fit the room. Furniture that's too big for a space isn't a good look. And also, conversely, furniture that's too small for a space, it just feels awkward and weird. It's got to be the right fit. So a good rule of thumb is this. Large pieces, they should take up about 2/3 of the wall that they're on. And that's going to leave breathing room and keep the space balanced. Now, on top of all of those things, there's visual weight. Every room needs a mix of heavy and light pieces to feel comfortable. If you've got too many dark colors, too many chunky items, like if I'm sitting in the living room, it's maybe one too many chunky items. But if you've got too many chunky items, they can make a room feel closed in. Too many delicate or light elements, and the room can feel empty. All of the magic happens in the mix of the right amounts of things. Solid anchor pieces paired with lighter materials, textures, or open space. Now, in the end, whether you're getting dressed or choosing paint colors or furniture for your home or whatever, the principle's the same. When things fit right, when the proportions make sense, everything is going to fall into place. All right, now we're on to our fourth tip, and it's this. Don't let trends drive your choices. Start with classic styles that are timeless and proven. Trends in clothing, as in everything else, they catch the spotlight for a bit. They're everywhere you look, right? And then before long, everybody's moved on, and there are new trends out there that are capturing everybody's interest. Now, if you want to avoid the money pit and the exhaustion of trends, opt for clothing styles that are classic, items that are timeless. A leather jacket, dark jeans and boots. All looked good in the 50s. They all still look good. That's what our article says about fashion. Avoid the trends, stick with the timeless stuff. Now, the paint connection is really, really obvious here. If you're trying to improve your design skills and you don't want to be repainting all the time, then watch out for trends and stick to the classics. When I had my first house, the trend at that point was bright colors. Lime greens, yellows, blues. It was a crazy time, right? Maybe some of you remember it. But those bold colors, they were everywhere. Everywhere I looked anyway, and I was so tempted to opt for this funky lime green in one particular space. I was convinced it was going to be fun. It was going to be something new. It was going to be different, not the same old thing. My kitchen, my dining room, whatever space it was going to be unique. In the end, fortunately, I decided to skip the trend and I went with something much more classic. And as a result, I painted the kitchen, dining room, whatever it was, and I didn't have to change anything for the next 5 years or so. And even then, when we changed it, it wasn't because the color wasn't really working for us. We just wanted to go in a new direction, right? Benjamin Moore's new color of the year, Silhouette. It was chosen with literally this concept in mind. It's a trending color, right? It's color trends. That's what we're talking about. This is a trend, but it's a color that they chose specifically so you can live with it for a longer period of time than a typical trend. It's not something that's going to be here today and gone tomorrow. You can work with Silhouette confidently and know it's going to be working for you years down the road. So keep that in mind. With clothing and colors, timeless combinations and color schemes and styles are really going to help you achieve great results quickly, and you won't find yourself changing them out when the next trend drops. Now, the fifth point, or lesson, or whatever you want to call it, about dressing well is called the SWAP, S-W-A-P, trick. And it works just as well for your wardrobe as it does for your home. And here's the scoop. Let's say your go-to outfit. Again, this all comes from the Essential Man article that I'm going to link to in the show notes. But let's say your go-to outfit is something like a linen button-down shirt, navy pants, and white shoes. It's a classic look. It's clean, it's safe, it's reliable. But maybe you're getting a little bored with it and you want to change things up without going full fashion experiment. Now, instead of overhauling everything, just swap out one piece. That's the recommendation. Lose the linen shirt, let's say, and replace it with a light blue one. Suddenly the outfit feels a little bit fresh. It's still you, but it's got some new energy behind it. And once that feels comfortable, maybe you swap out something else, maybe a patterned shirt next time, or pants in a different color. You build confidence. That's the idea. One small change at a time. And before you know it, your look has evolved without jarring your senses, or, more likely, having a moment when you walk out of the bedroom all dressed in your new wardrobe and you find all the kids staring at you with open mouths before they run off laughing. You go slow. It's better for you. It's better for everybody. Well, that same idea applies when you're working with color in your home. If your rooms have always been beige, gray, white, neutral, whatever, and you're craving something new, don't start by repainting every wall in some new funky color that you're jumping into. Just make one swap. Bring in a new accent color with throw pillows, with artwork, with a rug. And once that feels right, then you can take the next step. Maybe you paint a single wall. Maybe you add a colorful piece of furniture, whatever. But bit by bit, you kind of expand your comfort zone. You swap one thing out for something that's a little bolder. Your eye adjusts to it. You get used to living with it. And before long, you find you can make bolder choices with your colors. And maybe someday down the road, you're even painting the trim a color other than white or an off-white. And maybe you're wallpapering the ceiling. Who knows? Those big dramatic changes can be incredible. They can be game changers, but they're going to look and feel best when you've eased your way into them. All right, last thing I'll bring up from the article is this. Buy the best quality that fits into your budget. The best quality, whatever it is, that fits into your budget. There's not much reason to expand on this point. It's really obvious. In regards to clothes, the better quality products are going to look better and last longer. They're just made better, and it matters, and it shows. And the same is true with paint, with brushes, with tools, and all of that. And I'm not necessarily talking brand name stuff. I'm not saying buy brand names necessarily. There's a difference between quality and name brand items, or there can be a difference. I've seen plenty of name brand goods that really aren't all that great at the end of the day, not in terms of quality. I'm talking about good stuff. Buy the best stuff that your budget will allow. Investing in good brushes, good paint, good tools, whether it's a saw or a socket set or, even something as basic as a hammer. Good tools make every project easier, they last longer, and they end up saving you money down the road. Good paint. It applies easier, it covers and hides better, and it lasts longer. If you don't want to be replacing stuff regularly, buy the best quality that your budget allows. All right, that's it for my fashion/home improvement tips. Hopefully I helped some style-impaired men out there, myself, first and foremost. And hopefully you all had some home improvement connections and takeaways that you pulled out of that. All right, once again, that article that I referenced came from The Essential Man, and it is really worth a read. It's a really good article, and I've got links in the show notes if you want to check it out. All right, one note of business before I wrap everything up officially. Today is your last day to get entered into our big Color of the Year giveaway. We're going to be giving away 4 $250 RepcoLite gift certificates, and to get entered, you just need to leave a comment on a Color of the Year post that we've got on Facebook and Instagram. The easiest way to find these posts is to go to RepcoLite.com and then click the contest banner on the homepage. From there, I've got links to the posts that I'm talking about, and then all you need to do is tell us which color trend color from Benjamin Moore's 2026 Color Trends palette moves you, which color moves you, and which room in your home it moves you to paint. That's it. Lots of people picked Rain Dance for their bathrooms or Silhouette for their bedrooms. Just tell us which color moves you and which room you're inspired to paint, and you're entered into the contest. Every comment you make is an entry, so go to RepcoLite.com and click the contest banner on the homepage. Get entered. You've got till the end of today to do that, and then we'll draw winners, and I'll post them and get a hold of you next week. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Home in Progress. If you like what you heard, please consider subscribing to the show. You'll never miss an episode. They'll just always show right up in your inbox, and when we release bonus episodes, you'll get those too without having to go searching for them. So it's a big win there. And if you wouldn't mind, if you feel so inclined, please consider leaving a review for the show. It helps other people find it, and that really helps us out. All right, if you've got any comments, thoughts, topics you'd like me to cover in the future, you can email me at radio@repcolite.com. That'll go straight to me, and we can talk about what you think should be on the show or what you think about what was on the show. I'm all for those conversations, so email me at radio@repcolite.com, RepcoLite.com, and we can have those conversations. That'd be great. All right, for Home in Progress, I'm Dan Hansen. Thanks for listening.